This woman was born into a wealthy family yet lived a miserable life, simply because of a hospital error at her birth. The affluent life she should have enjoyed was stolen by another woman. Unaware of the truth, she lived 29 years of poverty for someone else. Her name was Jinran. To attend university, she worked as a sales clerk in a bookstore. Jinran refused to accept a lifetime of poverty. She had a boyfriend, Sun-yeon, who had been with her for 7 years and was on the verge of becoming a prosecutor. Jinran pinned her hopes on Sun-yeon to change her life. But just as Sun-yeon was about to achieve success, he began to resent the impoverished Jinran. He feared Jinran would hinder his bright future. Unbeknownst to him, Jinran had saved every penny to pay for his tuition. Jinran's mother, Taeyeon, sold her dowry to buy Sun-yeon an expensive suit so he could dress properly. Yet Jinran's sacrifices never earned Sun-jun's gratitude. Even when a seat opened up on the subway, he refused to give it to the exhausted Jinran. He even claimed their marriage was a forced arrangement. Pushed to her limit, Jinran confronted Sun-yeon, pointing out that everything he had came from her. She never imagined her boyfriend could be so shameless. In a fit of anger, she coldly ended the relationship. She expected him to come begging for forgiveness. Instead, Sun-yeon went on a blind date with a wealthy heiress the very next day. This heiress was none other than the woman who had swapped lives with Jinran. Jinwon, who should have lived in poverty, now enjoy a life of luxury under the doting care of her chaebol parents. A graduate of a prestigious university, she was also the daughter of the publishing company president. Even at 29, her parents still gave her millions in monthly allowance. Jinwon never worried about money running short. She pursued her dreams with complete freedom. Jinwon was the woman Sun-yeon had always dreamed of. Jinran secretly followed her boyfriend to his blind date. Seeing Jinwon's expensive attire, she couldn't help but feel inferior. Jinwon couldn't care less about the match her mother had arranged. She planned to just breeze through it, but Sun-yeon falls for Jinwon at first sight and pours out his admiration for her. Jinran forces back her grief and takes her boyfriend home. Fearing Jinran will ruin his dreams of marrying into wealth, Sun-yeon cuts all ties with her. Jinran grabs the juice on the table, ready to splash it at Sun-yeon, but remembering his suit was bought by her mother, Jinran angrily poured the juice over her own head. Instead, she despised her boyfriend's heartlessness. This scene shocked Jinwon deeply. She finally understood Sun-jun's true nature as a scumbag. She then poured the entire juice container directly onto Sun-jun's face and helped Jinran wipe the stains off her clothes. Jinran told Jinwon that if she truly wanted to help, she must never see Sun-yeon again. This left Jinwon somewhat baffled, but in the end, she encouraged Jinran to face life positively. A devastated Jinran stormed out, colliding with Jinwon's father, her own biological father, Ji-woong, who was just leaving. He hurriedly helped Jinran up after she fell. Jinran remained immersed in her pain, yet still apologized to Chairman for causing him trouble. At that moment, the man beside her thoughtfully handed Jinran a handkerchief to wipe her tears. It turned out Chairman had witnessed Jinran's ordeal earlier and couldn't help but feel heartbroken for her. Chairman offered to drive Jinran home. He felt his daughter had caused her pain and hoped she could pull herself together. Jinran watched the considerate Chairman and envied Jinwon. She thought of her own father, addicted to gambling, who had racked up a mountain of debt, making their already impoverished family's burden unbearable. Later, Jinran couldn't help but investigate Jinwon. She was astonished to discover Jinwon was not only born on the same day as her, but also in the very same hospital. At first, Jinran didn't think much of it, and merely complained to her friend Debom about the world's unfairness. To change her fate, Jinran set aside her pride and knelt before Sun-yeon, begging him not to abandon her. She hoped to escape her predicament by relying on Sun-jun's future career as a prosecutor, but Sun-yeon, worried that Jinran's gambler father would tarnish his future, cruelly moved away. One day, Jinran suffered an unexpected injury. She discovered her blood type didn't match her parents'. At the time, she didn't think much of it. Later, however, Jinran mentioned her blood type to a colleague. The colleague was shocked and speculated she might have been switched at birth. Meanwhile, Jinwon arrived at the bookstore dressed in designer labels, radiating confidence. Jinran observed the stark contrast between her life and Jinwon's. A single handbag he carried cost more than her several years' salary. Jinran began fantasizing that she might also be a wealthy heiress. Driven by curiosity, she visited the hospital where she was born, hoping to uncover the truth. However, the hospital, fearful of liability, refused to disclose any information. Jinran insisted she only wanted to find her biological father and wouldn't hold a hospital liable. She left her contact information with the staff, hoping they would reach out once they had time to think it through. After leaving the hospital, Jinran hurried to cross the street before the light turned red. Unexpectedly, she nearly collided with Chairman's car once more. This encounter revealed to Chairman that Jinran and his daughter were born in the same hospital at the same time. With such a connection, Chairman invited Jinran to visit his villa. Jinran suddenly felt an overwhelming certainty. Jinwon had likely switched places with her, and the chairman before her was her biological father. The thought made Jinran's heart race, so she took advantage of a bathroom break to secretly take the chairman's toothbrush. After leaving, she went straight to the hospital to get a paternity test to confirm that the results wouldn't be ready until the following afternoon. The next morning, Jinran received a call from the hospital where she was born. They informed her that only 2 female infants were born at the same time as her. This left Jinran utterly shocked. It was truly possible that she and Jinwon had been accidentally switched at birth. She stood outside, staring at the family she'd lived with for 29 years in poverty, unsure how to broach the subject. Though her father was a compulsive gambler, her mother, eldest sister, and younger sister had always been kind to her. By afternoon, Jinran, waiting anxiously, finally received the paternity test results from the hospital. As she had feared, Chairman was indeed her biological father. Upon learning the truth, Jinran shed her former sense of inferiority. She arrived at the chairman's residence and summoned the courage to ring the doorbell. She intended to reclaim the happiness that rightfully belonged to her. When her biological parents appeared before her, Jinran collapsed to the ground. She then forced herself to steady her emotions and revealed the truth. She was their daughter, her mother, not he. Dismissed Jinran as mentally unstable and delusional. Chairman, filled with regret for ever meeting Jinran, immediately tried to drive her away. Seeing this, Jinran had no choice but to produce the paternity test report. Yet, even after seeing the report, the couple refused to believe Jinran's truth. They insisted Jinran had forged the report to extort money. He not only disbelieved her but also harshly berated Jinran. Watching her birth parents humiliate her like this, Jinran silently shed tears and chose to leave. Outside, she could no longer hold back and burst into wailing sobs. Her life had been stolen, yet she bore all the pain. The chairman and his wife remained unwilling to accept Jinran's truth. They resolved to pretend today's events never happened. Their only daughter was Jinwon, but Nahi still felt terrified. She resolved to have a paternity test done to ease her mind. So she took Nahi's hair to the testing center and paid a high price to have the results processed that very day. In anxious anticipation, by evening she finally received the report. Just as Jinran had said, Nahi, whom they had raised for 29 years, was not their biological daughter. Their true biological daughter was Jinran. This cruel truth devastated Nahi. Jinwon had never seen her mother so heartbroken. She held her mother tightly, offering comfort. The chairman witnessed this scene and instantly understood everything. Only then did Nahi regret her harsh words and insults toward Jinran that morning. The couple decided to temporarily conceal the truth from Jinwon. Looking at Jinwon, whom they had raised for 29 years, Nahi felt utterly lost about how to navigate this relationship. Unaware of the truth, Jinwon invited her mother to the movies early that morning, hoping to lift her spirits. She wanted to help her mother dispel the gloom weighing on her heart, but Nahi was in no mood for such distractions. All she could think of was seeing her biological daughter. Later, Nahi went alone to Jinran's workplace. Unexpectedly, she witnessed Jinran being harassed by a rude customer. Seeing her daughter treated with such meekness, Nahi's heart ached too much to watch. She waited until Jinran's lunch break. Finally, the two sat together, but Nahi didn't know how to begin until she saw Jinran's hands, covered in bruises. Nahi instantly burst into tears. She vowed never to let Jinran suffer harm again. Just as they embraced tightly before parting, Jinwon, on her way to the bookstore, witnessed this baffling scene. Faced with her questioning, Nahi lied, claiming Jinran was her friend's daughter. Then, weighed down by worry, she left. In the days that followed, Nahi began deliberately resisting Jinwon's attempts to get close. Jinwon was baffled by this. She resented her mother for treating her this way. Yet Nahi still lacked the courage to reveal the truth. Her sole focus now was figuring out how to bring Jinran home. Later, Nahi sought out Jinran's adoptive mother, Taeyong, and revealed the truth. Taeyong dismissed Nahi's claims as nonsense and promptly threw her out. Returning home in a rage, Nahi accidentally knocked over a teacup. Suddenly, she recalled Jinran's blood test results from the hospital. A blood type unrelated to her own. Combined with what Nahi had just said, she now believed this reality. But what hurt her most was that Jinran hadn't confessed to her first. Nahi told her husband about today's meeting with Jinran's adoptive mother. Thinking of Jinran's impoverished upbringing broke Nahi's heart. She wanted to make amends to Jinran as soon as possible. Chairman remained troubled, unsure how to reveal the truth to Jinwon. Yet he insisted Jinwon would always be his child, no matter what. Seeing her adoptive mother drinking alone in sorrow, Jinran resolved to confess the truth. But Taeyong couldn't bear such a cruel reality. She deliberately interrupted Jinran. Though Jinran was grateful for her adoptive adopted mother's nurturing kindness. She yearned for a glamorous life to pursue her dreams. Jinran had grown weary of her impoverished status and was eager to embrace a dazzling existence. She proactively called Nahi to arrange a meal and addressed her as mom. This filled Nahi with overwhelming emotion. She purchased expensive clothes for Jinran. Seeing the luxurious handbag and the million-dollar outfit, Jinran's face lit up with a satisfied smile. This was the life she truly longed to live. After changing into her new clothes, Jinran went out to dinner with Nahi. This scene was witnessed from afar by Taeyong. Seeing how effortlessly Nahi could dress Jinran in designer labels, radiant and dazzling, while he struggled even to cover his daughter's college tuition, Taeyong returned home, his heart aching with sorrow and pain. Had Jinran felt no attachment to this foster mother over 29 years. Just then, Jenwon and her uncle Siwoo came looking for Debon, who rented a room here. Hearing the voices, Taeyong returned to the inner room and saw Jenwon. But at that moment, she didn't know Jenwon was her biological daughter. She only knew Jenwon was the matchmaking candidate for Jinran's ex-boyfriend. Seeking to vent Jinran's pent-up anger, she grabbed salt and threw it all over Jenwon, blaming her for causing Jinran and Soonjun's breakup. Meanwhile, Jinran also confided in Nahi that Jenwon was the reason she split with her ex-boyfriend. This made Nahi feel deeply guilty. The next day, Taeyong learned from her younger daughter that Jenwon was born on the same day as Jinran. She instantly realized Jenwon was her biological daughter. Chairman finally resolved to reveal the truth. He told Jenwon, "No matter what, you are my daughter." Hearing this, Jenwon suddenly understood. She finally understood why her mother had grown so close to Jinran while distancing herself. At that moment, Jenwon just wanted to be alone to calm down. Jinran wanted to know her adoptive mother's thoughts on the matter. Taeyong didn't want to send Jinran back to her biological parents. She also didn't want to shatter Jenwon's life of privilege. But Jinran refused to accept a life of constant hardship. That day, Jinran was cornered in a parking lot by two debt collectors. Due to her adoptive father's gambling debts, Jinran warned them to leave immediately or face consequences. But the collectors showed no mercy. Just then, Jinran spotted Chairman walking toward them. She deliberately spat to provoke the collectors, hoping Chairman her father would see her being bullied and take her home sooner. Sure enough, upon seeing his biological daughter being assaulted, Ji-woon immediately stepped forward, shielding Jinran behind him. The debt collectors, unaware of Ji-woon's identity, prepared to severely punish him. Just then, Jenwon rushed over, declaring she had already called the police, and warning them to leave immediately. Though Jenwon saved both of them, her heart was filled with anguish. The father who should have protected her no longer belonged to her. Ji-woon watched the scene, utterly at a loss. Later, Jinran confronted Jenwon, furiously accusing her. "I'm the victim here. Why are you pretending to be the one in need?" Jenwon retorted, "If Chairman were from a poor family, would you still be so eager?" Jinran countered, "Why don't you seek out your own biological parents?" She didn't want to dwell on what had already happened. Jinran only wanted Jenwon to return to the life that rightfully belonged to her. Summoning her courage, Jenwon chose to return to the chairman's father's home. She had hoped to find some comfort there, but when she returned to her room and opened the wardrobe, she discovered all her clothes were gone. Only through Siwoo did she learn her mother had hidden all her clothes. Jenwon was heartbroken upon learning this. She summoned the courage to meet her biological mother, yet Jenwon felt no warmth or connection from her mother. Still, she had no choice but to accept this reality. Chairman told his wife about Jinran being bullied today. Nahi grew anxious and decided to bring Jinran back immediately to live with Jenwon. The chairman tried to dissuade his wife from this idea. Jenwon's biological parents would never agree to such an arrangement. Nahi, consumed by anxiety, declared she would stop at nothing to bring Jinran back. These words were overheard by Jenwon, who had just returned home. She could scarcely believe what she was hearing. The next day, Nahi arranged a meeting with Taeyong. They discussed the custody of both daughters. Nahi insisted on taking both children home to raise. Enraged, Taeyong grabbed a glass of water and splashed it directly in Nahi's face. Taeyong believed forcing the two children to live together would only be torture. She firmly rejected Nahi's proposal. With no agreement reached, Nahi summoned both daughters. She placed the final decision in their hands. Seeing this, Taeyong didn't want to cause the children pain, attempted to pull Jinran back. But Jinran broke free from her adoptive mother's grasp. Her resolve was unshakable. She must return to her biological parents. Meanwhile, Jenwon equally refused to leave the parents who raised her. She also expressed unwillingness to live with Jinran. Heartbroken, Taeyong silently chose to leave. Jenwon rushed after her. She pleaded for her mother to give her time to accept this reality. The two embraced tightly, weeping uncontrollably. Jinran returned home and sought out her adoptive mother again, pleading for permission to start a new life. Taeyong offered no response to Jinran, only recounting cherished memories of their time together. Jinran finally steeled herself, declaring that if her mother refused, she would have no choice but to abandon her. To spare Jinran further humiliation, Taeyong endured the pain in her heart and let her do as she wished. Returning home, Taeyong wept bitterly before her eldest daughter, Taeran, Upon learning the truth, Taeran was furious. She sought out Jinran and slapped her hard across the face. But no matter how her sister scolded her, Jinran remained determined to return to her chaebol parents. Meanwhile, Jinwon forced her adoptive mother to make a choice. She stated she would not interfere with anything except Jinran's return to this household. Nahi, however, wished to bring Jinran back to live with them. She urged Jinwon to treat Jinran like a sister. Seeing this, Jinwon declared she would leave the household. She hadn't lived Jinran's life and couldn't comprehend Jinran's yearning to change her fate. The next day, after deep reflection, Jinwon agreed to live with Jinran. Upon hearing the news, Jinran was overcome with emotion. She vowed to treat Jinwon well. To the family who raised her, she could only offer a tearful apology. Just as Jinran packed her things to leave, her adoptive mother suddenly collapsed from illness. When Taeyong regained consciousness, she discovered she had gone blind. Her younger sister Miran blamed Jinran entirely for the incident. Jinran rushed her adoptive mother to the hospital in panic, constantly reassuring herself that her mother would be fine. After examination, the doctor informed Taeyong she had advanced glaucoma and would be completely blind within 6 months. She begged the doctor to conceal her condition. Returning home, Taeyong endured the pain and urged Jinran to forget everything about this family and go live well with her biological parents. Her adoptive mother's words broke Jinran's heart. Ultimately, Jinran left the place she had lived for 29 years. Taeyong wept bitterly in her grief. Jinran finally settled into the luxurious villa, yet Jinwon remained gloomy. Fortunately, her superior Yunho brought her some joe. After spending time together, Jinwon found herself drawn to Yunho. Jinran was thrilled to finally sleep in a large bed. She vowed to reclaim everything that rightfully belonged to her. At dinner time, Jinran summoned Jinwon downstairs to eat as the hostess. This deeply annoyed Jinwon. Jinran declared she was the true daughter of this household, but when Jinran saw her mother appear, she instantly changed her tune, begging Jinwon not to drive her away. This left Jinwon utterly bewildered. Naively, she fell right into the trap Jinran had set. In front of her adoptive mother, she uttered words insulting Jinran. Nahi witnessed this and slapped Jinwon hard across the face. Jinwon could only silently endure the humiliation and burst into tears. Unaware of the truth, Nahi comforted Jinran, assuring her everything would be alright. Thus, with her mother's compensation, Jinran purchased an entire outfit of designer clothes. She excitedly spread all the luxury items she'd bought across her bed. This was the life she'd always dreamed of. Yet what Jinwon never imagined was that Jinran had also developed feelings for Yunho. Soon after, Jinran received 300,000 won in allowance transferred by her mother. This left Jinran utterly stunned. News of Jinran becoming a chaebol heiress quickly reached Sunyeon. Sunyeon wanted to reconcile with Jinran. Jinran recalled the moment she had knelt before him only to be cast aside. She decisively rejected him. Taeyong's condition grew increasingly severe. Having lost her sight again, she stumbled and fell to the ground. Jinwon and Debom rushed over upon hearing the news. Jinran happened to witness the scene from outside the door. Just as she was about to enter to check on her adoptive mother, she froze. Thinking of her current wealthy life, she no longer wished to have any connection with her poor adoptive mother's family. Without further hesitation, Jinran quickly fled the scene. Meanwhile, to reassure everyone, Taeyong claimed she was perfectly fine. Jinwon watched silently. Taeyong urged Jinwon to leave immediately. Forget your biological parents here. Go live your life. Jinwon seethed inside, unable to speak. Just moments before, her father Nambong, burdened by gambling debts, had approached the chairman. He demanded to sue the hospital for compensation over the medical error, but the chairman feared such a scandal would drag both daughters into public controversy. Seeing he gained nothing, Nambong proposed a trade, 1 billion won per daughter. Jinwon, eavesdropping outside the door, overheard her biological father's demand. She told him she would never become his tool for begging. Meanwhile, Jinran hadn't entirely forgotten her adoptive mother's nurturing kindness. She visited the hospital to inquire about her adoptive mother's condition. The doctor didn't hide the truth and told her everything. Jinran left the hospital in a daze. She recalled her adoptive mother's harsh words, telling her to forget her. Only then did Jinran realize her adoptive mother had never intended to abandon her. Meanwhile, Jinwon accidentally obtained Taeyong's eye treatment prescription. She learned about her mother's condition from the staff. Jinwon then sought out Jinran, urging her to return and care for Taeyong if she didn't want to regret it. But Jinran believed Jinwon was using this as an excuse to push her away. She insisted Jinwon was Taeyong's biological daughter and should be the one to care for him. Seeing this, Jinwon decided to move out and live independently. However, she didn't mention her birth mother's impending blindness. She only said that living apart for a while would free her from feeling guilty. Despite this, Nahi's heart still resisted letting Jinwon leave like this. Jinran felt only by Jinwon leaving could she possess all her parents' love. Jinwon ultimately accepted her impoverished parents, hoping to make amends before her mother lost her sight. Mother and daughter joyfully drove out for a refreshing outing. Jinwon eventually brought her mother to tour the company. There, Jinran and her wealthy mother happened to meet. Nahi noticed Taeyong wearing the same designer clothes she had. She realized Jinwon must have bought them for her. This deeply annoyed Nahi. She deliberately provoked them, saying, "This isn't a place just anyone can visit." Hearing this, Jinwon angrily declared that no matter what, she was the chairman's daughter. To inherit this publishing house, she absolutely couldn't abandon her identity as the chairman's daughter. It turned out the chairman had already decided to hand over the most valuable publishing house to Jinwon. Nahi believed Jinwon, not being his biological daughter, had no right to inherit any of this. Jinran, upon hearing this, became quite excited, thinking the publishing house would be passed on to her. But the chairman didn't change his previous decision just because Jinwon wasn't his biological daughter. He felt the company he had worked so hard to build should be entrusted to the capable Jinwon. Not just anyone possesses the qualifications to run a publishing house. Nahi, however, adamantly refused to let Jinwon take over the publishing house. The two clashed fiercely over this. Nahi still held genuine affection for Jinwon. She wanted Jinwon to stay by her side, but she didn't want her to snatch away Jinran's future. Nahi tried persuading Jinwon to abandon the publishing house and inherit only part of the estate. But Jinwon was speechless at her adoptive mother's selfish behavior. Owning her own publishing house had been Jinwon's lifelong dream. She declared she couldn't give it up. Not wanting to put her adoptive father in a difficult position, Jinwon decided to formally move out and live with her biological parents. Jiwoon vehemently opposed this. Jinwon's mind was made up. She thanked her father for his love and care. However, to keep Jinwon, Jiwoon announces at the dinner table in front of everyone that Jinwon will inherit the publishing company. Jinran and her son Sangwon will inherit the remaining assets. Finally, he directly warns Jinwon that if she leaves this family, he will no longer be her father. Resentful Jinran had expected to inherit the vast fortune, but never imagined this would be the outcome. Meanwhile, Nahi approached Taeyeon to transfer their respective children's household registrations to each other's names. If Jinwon's registration were removed from the family household, she would lose her eligibility to inherit the chairman's estate. Taeyong understood Nahi's motive clearly and immediately refused to comply, severely rebuking Nahi for her heartlessness. Yet Nahi believed Taeyong's true motive was to extract more wealth from Jinwon. Meanwhile, Jinran concluded that since she couldn't inherit the publishing house, she must find another path to fulfill her dreams. She accidentally discovered that Yunho was actually a hidden tycoon. On the surface, Yunho's mother ran an unassuming soup restaurant, but in reality, her family's assets were no less substantial than Jiwoon's. Thus Jinran resolved to become Yunho's wife. What Jinran didn't know was that Yunho had recently confirmed his romantic relationship with Jinwon. Though they hadn't publicly announced their romance, they were deeply drawn to each other. To win over her future mother-in-law, Jinran began deliberately frequenting the soup restaurant. Though she absolutely detested rice sausage, she forced herself to swallow it in large bites, fighting the urge to vomit. Yunho's mother, Yoon-soo, instantly saw Jinran's intentions toward her son. She told Jinran that if she could satisfy her, she would approve of her son dating her. This left Jinran both shocked and incredibly excited. Just then, a wave of nausea hit her. She immediately dashed outside and vomited up every last bite of the rice sausage she'd struggled to swallow. Later, Jinran returned to Yoon-soo's shop, changed into her work uniform, and began pulling out all the stops to win her future mother-in-law's approval. In the days that followed, Jinran rushed over to help whenever she had a moment. This led Yoon-soo to consider Jinran as a potential future daughter-in-law. She even specifically asked her son, who had just returned from work, to escort Jinran home. However, Yunho felt nothing for Jinran. After dropping her off, he simply said goodbye and was about to leave. Jinwon, who had just returned home, witnessed this and became furious. Worried his mother might cause unnecessary misunderstandings, Yunho directly told his mother that he and Jinwon were already dating and asked her not to interfere in his affairs. Meanwhile, Sangwon, unable to inherit the family's most valuable publishing company, drunk and enraged, confronted his father about the unfair treatment he felt he received as a son. Jiwoon, furious, knocked his son to the ground. He insisted on not changing his will. Jinwon witnessed this scene and was terrified. She felt her presence in this family only brought suffering to everyone. After deep reflection, she gathers the courage to tell the chairman she will transfer her household registration to her biological parents' name. But the chairman had previously stated that if Jinwon chose to leave, she would forfeit her inheritance rights. He tries to persuade Jinwon to stay, but her mind is made up. On the way back, the chairman grows increasingly furious. In a moment of impulse, he kicks Jinwon out of the car mid-journey. Suddenly, a heavy rain began to pour. Fortunately, Yunho arrived by her side. This made Jinwon no longer feel afraid. Upon returning home, chairman told everyone about abandoning Jinwon. Jinran felt overjoyed upon hearing this, yet she sensed the matter wasn't as simple as it seemed. So she confronted Jinwon, demanding to know her true intentions. Jinwon stated Jinran could take whatever she wanted. She no longer had any attachments, but Jinran remained convinced Jin-won had ulterior motives. She warned Jin-won to stay away from Yun-ho, yet Jin-won showed no sign of backing down. She declared firmly that she would protect Yun-ho at all costs. After packing up all her belongings, Jin-won formally left the place she had called home for 29 years. She even left behind all her company shares and her car. Though Nahi was deeply reluctant for Jinran's sake, she reluctantly saw Jin-won off. Meanwhile, Jinran's hatred toward Jin-won grew ever stronger. That day, she found an opportunity to frame Jin-won at the company. She stole the film roll for one page of the book Jin-won was responsible for printing. But as she left the company, her nerves got the better of her. She accidentally dropped the film on the ground. Though the security camera recorded the incident, the poster she held shielded the fallen film from view. Unaware of the missing page, Jin-won instructed his subordinate to send the film for printing. Meanwhile, Jinran drove to a remote location and discarded the stolen film. She then drove off triumphantly. Soon, it was discovered that the book Jin-won was publishing was missing a crucial page, resulting in the scrapping of all 30,000 printed copies. This caused catastrophic losses for the publishing house. Everyone felt deeply burdened. Only Jinran secretly rejoiced. Upon learning of this, chairman punished Yun-ho with a pay cut and ordered team leader Jin-won's dismissal. Jin-won later sought out chairman to apologize. To prevent others from being punished because of her, she voluntarily requested to take full responsibility for the incident. The chairman outwardly reprimanded Jin-won, but in reality, he didn't want to burden her with too much pressure. Meanwhile, Yun-ho believed Jin-won wouldn't make such a basic mistake and began investigating the true cause of the incident. He desperately wanted to find the missing film reel. By examining the surveillance footage, he quickly identified the problem. Sure enough, he saw Jinran leaving the company in a flustered state. Though the footage didn't directly capture Jinran picking up the film, he was certain she was responsible. Just then, Yun-ho received an urgent call from his mother, demanding he return home immediately. To test whether Jinran could become his wife, Yoon-soo revealed she worked in the loan shark business. She then ordered Jinran to handle a distressed mother and son who had come to demand justice. The woman's husband had committed suicide after being unable to repay his high-interest loans. The mother and son had come seeking answers. Jinran never imagined Yoon-soo could be such a terrifying woman, but to become this family's daughter-in-law and inherit an even larger fortune. Jinran shattered a vase in a show of intimidation. Unexpectedly, Yun-ho witnessed this scene upon returning home. Only then did he realize his father had died shielding his wicked mother from danger. The horrific image of his father's death remained vividly etched in his memory. Jinran's actions earned Yoon-soo's approval. She declared to her son that Jinran would be his future wife, ordering Yun-ho to prepare for their marriage. Jinran was overjoyed inside, but Yun-ho refused to acknowledge his mother. At the next day's meeting, Yun-ho didn't directly accuse Jinran of framing Jin-won. Instead, he stated he'd identified the mastermind through surveillance footage and demanded the culprit confess voluntarily. Jinran grew frantic upon hearing this. After work, she rushed to find and destroy the incriminating evidence. Yun-ho, who had been waiting, appeared just in time and caught Jinran red-handed. Under Yun-ho's relentless questioning, Jinran had no choice but to admit her actions, yet she refused to apologize, insisting she only wanted to win over Jin-won once. Why did Jin-won receive everyone's affection, while she lost her precious life because of her? Yun-ho, witnessing this, couldn't comprehend the pain Jinran had endured. The next day, Jinran submitted her resignation letter to Yun-ho. Jin-won also resigned to avoid causing trouble for Yun-ho. Yun-ho was furious at Jinran's decision to quit after making a mistake. He scolded her, demanding she face her errors and correct herself promptly. Meanwhile, Jin-won chose to care for her mother, who was losing her sight. She willingly gave up her wealthy life. After Nahi learned the true reason for Jin-won's departure from Taeyong, she never imagined Jin-won could be so kind-hearted. Taeyong pleaded with Nahi to bring Jin-won back home. Nahi was torn inside. She felt both sympathy for Jin-won and reluctance to let Jinran lose her inheritance because of Jin-won. She tentatively asked her husband if he would still accept Jin-won back. However, Jin-won's departure had completely broken the chairman's heart. He told his wife to stop interfering in Jin-won's affairs. Later, Nahi sought out Jinran to ask if she knew the real reason Jin-won left. Jinran answered fearfully that she did. Nahi felt a pang of disappointment. Jinran worried about Jin-won returning to this home. She told her mother she didn't want Jin-won back to take her place. Earlier that morning, the chairman had finally apologized for his previous neglect of Jinran and promised a weekend outing to strengthen their father-daughter bond. Jinran dreaded Jin-won's return disrupting this hard-won change. Yet the chairman secretly, and to observe Jin-won's life, seeing the usually pampered Jin-won now skillfully entertaining guests, the chairman couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. This scene was witnessed by Taeyong. Taeyong told the chairman that Jin-won had returned to care for him as he was losing his sight. He hoped the chairman would take Jin-won back home again and spare her from suffering here any longer. Only then did the chairman understand the reason for Jin-won's departure. He deeply regretted his harsh words toward her. Returning home, the chairman was filled with rage. He blamed his wife for concealing the truth about Jin-won's departure all this time. Meanwhile, Sang-won, seething over his father's unfair treatment, used his company shares to borrow 10 billion won from Yoon-soo for his own investments. Unexpectedly, lacking any talent for it, he lost everything and ended up owing 7 billion won. He was furious upon learning this. If the chairman found out, he would surely disown his son. Thus, she resolved to meet with Yoon-soo. Yoon-soo, however, intended to use this opportunity to secure more shares in the publishing company. Nahi then hurriedly brought assets under her name, hoping to redeem the publishing company shares. But these weren't what Yoon-soo wanted. She made excuses to stall for time, telling Nahi to return home and contact her later. Just as Nahi was about to leave, Jin-ran happened to arrive at the same place. This surprised Nahi greatly. How could she be here? After some explanation, Nahi finally understood. Yun-ho, whom both daughters liked, was actually this family's son. After returning home, Nahi persuaded Jin-ran to give up her feelings for Yun-ho. But Jin-ran, thinking of Yun-ho's mother's vast fortune, told her mother outright that she would never give up on Yun-ho. Later, Jin-ran even falsely accused Jin-won of only wanting to be with Yun-ho because she coveted his family's wealth. Meanwhile, Yoon-soo was very satisfied with Jin-ran as her daughter-in-law because Jin-ran was ruthless enough. A gentle woman like Jin-won simply couldn't meet her standards. Yet Yun-ho was inexplicably smitten with Jin-won. Yoon-soo absolutely refused to accept Jin-won as her daughter-in-law. Despite repeated attempts to persuade her, Jin-won remained steadfast in her devotion to Yun-ho. This infuriated Yoon-soo, who resolved to teach Jin-won a lesson. She exploited Jin-won's father's gambling addiction by having her subordinates lure him into another illegal gambling session, and then had the police arrest him. Upon learning of her father's arrest, Jin-won had no choice but to seek help from Jin-ran. Though Jin-ran despised her adoptive father's gambling, she remembered he had raised her. She turned to Soon-yeon, now prosecutor, hoping he could secure his foster father's bail. Unexpectedly, Soon-yeon declared himself powerless to help. He did, however, reveal to Jin-ran that Yoon-soo had orchestrated her foster father's downfall. The best course of action now was to confront Yoon-soo. Jin-ran had no choice but to approach Yoon-soo, begging her to spare her adoptive father. After learning the details, Jin-ran discovered Yoon-soo's trap was actually intended for Jin-won, yet she herself had stepped in for Jin-won and ended up here. Since Jin-ran had come, Yoon-soo put her plan into motion. She demanded Jin-ran trade her shares in the publishing company for a deal. Not only would it free her adoptive father, but she could also become Yoon-soo's daughter-in-law. Jin-ran fell deep in thought. After all, Chairman was her biological father. She didn't respond immediately, seeing Jin-ran hadn't found a way to rescue her father. Jin-won also sought Yoon-soo out to plead her case. Yoon-soo's demand was simple. She demanded Jin-won break up with her son. Otherwise, she would send her father to prison. Jin-won never imagined Yoon-soo could be so ruthless. Though she felt no affection for her father, she couldn't possibly send him to prison for the sake of her boyfriend. Jin-won told her father she desperately wanted to choose her boyfriend over him, but she simply couldn't make such a decision. Crying, she asked her father what she should do. Nam-bon watched his heartbroken daughter. Deeply moved, Jin-won then resolved to break up with Yun-ho. But just then, Yun-ho appeared and snatched the phone from Jin-won's hand. Furious and humiliated, he declared to his mother on the line, "Jin-won won't just save my father, she won't abandon me either." Yoon-soo heard this and was furious. Yun-ho watched Jin-won suffer and felt heartbroken. He told her not to worry, that he would handle everything. Only then did Jin-won show a happy smile. Yun-ho did not disappoint her. He found the prosecutor handling Nam-bon's case and threatened him with a recording of his mother bribing him, demanding a fair trial. The next day, Nam-bon walked out of the police station unharmed. Through this ordeal, the bond between father and daughter began to strengthen. Seizing the moment, Yun-ho proposed to Jin-won at the company. He vowed to stand by her no matter what happened. Their sweet moment infuriated Jin-ran nearby. She had sacrificed so much to become Yun-ho's wife, only to have it ruined by Jin-won in the end. Furious, Jin-ran sought out Yoon-soo. She resolved to win her battle against Jin-won at any cost. This aligned perfectly with Yoon-soo's intentions. She instructed Jin-ran to return and swap out the contract her brother had previously signed. This would prevent Sang-won from reclaiming the shares of the publishing company pledged as collateral. Yet as Jin-ran prepared to leave, she was unexpectedly encountered by Si-woo. Jin-ran hastily feigned drunkenness to cover her tracks. Returning to her room, Jin-ran glanced at the contract in her hand. She vowed to make Jin-won pay for his actions. The next day, Yun-ho sought out Jin-ran. He was furious that Jin-ran hadn't gone to Jin-won to admit her mistake. day. Unbeknownst to them, their conversation was overheard by the chairman from afar. He never imagined Jinran was the one who framed Jinwon. He was about to confront Jinran when a sudden surge of anger caused him to collapse unconscious. Fortunately, Yun-ho discovered him in time and rushed him to the hospital. After regaining consciousness, the chairman was utterly disillusioned with Jinran, yet she remained his biological daughter and offered her a chance to redeem herself. He deliberately inquired about Taeyong's health, unaware of her father's intent. Jinran lied that her adoptive mother was well. This shattered the chairman's last shred of hope in her. He resolved to return Jinran to her former life, hoping she would reform her flawed character. He informed Jinran that her adoptive parents would be invited to their home this weekend. A vague unease immediately stirred within Jinran, yet she couldn't fathom the chairman's true purpose. The weekend arrived swiftly. This was the first time in 29 years that the parents of the two daughters, whose lives had been unexpectedly swapped, sat together. Except for the chairman, everyone else assumed this would be nothing more than a simple dinner gathering. The chairman wasted no time. He promptly instructed Jinran's adoptive parents to take her home. Jinran was furious upon hearing this. Nambon believed the chairman was worried Jinran would inherit his fortune, hence sending her away. The chairman calmly informed them he intended to leave his entire estate to charity. He didn't want Jinran's life ruined by greed for wealth. Returning to her adoptive mother would give her a more grounded life, but Jinran refused to go back to her old life. She told the chairman that even without her, Jinwon could still care for their blind foster mother well. Jinran accused the chairman of having no affection for her. The chairman rebuked Jinran, saying she had only used him as a tool to satisfy her desires. Jinran found this laughable. She didn't believe she was at fault. The fault lay with her father for not finding her sooner. Father and daughter clashed fiercely once more. Jinran vowed she would never return to her impoverished adoptive parents, having already betrayed this family by siding with Yoon-soo. She knew her parents would never forgive her if they found out. Better to leave now while she could. He argued fiercely with her husband over this. She threatened to force him to reconsider his decision regarding Jinran. Unexpectedly, the chairman agreed to the divorce immediately. Jinran then handed her brother's contract to Yoon-soo. Yoon-soo was highly satisfied. He immediately had Jinran move into his son's room and instructed her to prepare to become his daughter-in-law. Jinran then planned to resign from the publishing house to work for Yoon-soo, but Yoon-soo felt Jinran's decision was a bit hasty. She believed Jinran could gather intelligence more effectively by staying at the publishing house. Jinran had assumed Yoon-soo would seize control of the publishing house and hand it over to Yun-ho to manage. Then, after marrying Yun-ho, she could simply reap the rewards. Unexpectedly, Yoon-soo only intended to acquire the publishing house and immediately sell it off. This would allow her to profit from the substantial price difference. Jinran was utterly shocked. She found herself in a dilemma. Meanwhile, Chairman finally learned his son had mortgaged shares to Yoon-soo. This enraged him. Chairman insisted on divorcing his wife. Jinwon also worried about Yoon-soo seizing the publishing house. Faced with Jinran's self-destructive choice, she had no choice but to send her mother to bring Jinran home. Taeyong also didn't want Jinran to ruin her life, but no matter how she pleaded, Jinran stubbornly insisted on staying with Yoon-soo. Seeing this, Taeyong could only sit down and weep helplessly. To prevent Yoon-soo from acquiring the publishing house, Jinwon checked the contract for the shares her brother had pledged. Only then did she discover the contract had been switched. What had clearly been written as a one-year repayment period was now reduced to just 1 month because the repayment wasn't made on time. Sangwon's pledged shares were irretrievable. Siwoo found this highly suspicious. He recalled discovering Jinran in Sangwon's room and concluded she must have swapped the contract. Jinwon angrily confronted Jinran with the document. When she refused to admit guilt, Jinwon deliberately mentioned her fingerprints had been lifted from the contract and threatened to involve the police if she wouldn't confess. Realizing her deception was exposed, Jinran stopped denying it, yet she felt no remorse whatsoever. Arrogantly, she tore the contract to shreds. What Jinran hadn't anticipated was, Jinwon had secretly installed a surveillance camera nearby. It captured every moment of Jinran's confession. Jinwon persuaded Jinran that to avoid arrest, she must retrieve Sangwon's original contract. She hoped Jinran would turn over a new leaf. He had been eavesdropping at the door, overhearing their entire conversation. Only then did she realize the extent of Jinran's malicious deeds. Fearing Jinwon would report her with the evidence, Jinran had no choice but to follow Jinwon's advice. She sneaked into the room while Yoon-soo was away and stole back the contract. Unexpectedly, one of Yoon-soo's enemies had quietly slipped in to exact revenge. Tragically, Jinran shielded Yoon-soo from the attack. When Yun-ho returned, He found Jinran injured, collapsed, and unconscious. Jinran had taken the fatal blow for Yoon-soo. Unexpectedly, Yoon-soo bribed the doctor to remove Jinran's uterus. She believed Jinran had sacrificed her ability to be a mother to save her. Thus, her son would surely marry Jinran out of gratitude to his mother. Yoon-soo then shifted the blame for this incident onto Jae-won, accusing her of causing all this by sending Jinran to steal from her room. Jae-won's heart ached upon hearing this. Watching Jinran clinging to life, she prayed for her swift recovery. Fortunately, Jinran regained consciousness after several days of unconsciousness. Unbearable agony in her abdomen made her cry out in pain. Only when Jinran awoke did Jae-won feel relieved. Jinran remained unaware of her infertility. She refused to acknowledge Jae-won. Meanwhile, Yun-ho was caught in a dilemma. He didn't know whether to choose Jinran to repay his mother's kindness. After this incident, Jinran also recognized her own mistakes. Yet stubbornly, she refused to apologize to her parents. She only wanted to drive them away, not he. Heartbroken, scolded Jinran, asking why she had to end up like this. Seeing Jinran's despondent state, Nahi spoke with heart-wrenching words, declaring she wouldn't forgive her. Only then did Jinran feel overwhelming regret. Nahi noticed Yun-ho had been standing behind her the whole time. Realizing her daughter's suffering was caused by his vicious mother, she angrily slapped Yun-ho across the face and ordered him to get out. Yun-ho felt utterly helpless. He could never escape his cruel mother's influence. He believed he was unworthy of continuing his relationship with Jae-won. With a heavy heart, he chose to end it. Jae-won accepted this painful outcome, but before leaving, Yun-ho placed the contract Jinran had stolen inside Jae-won's favorite record. He hoped she would return, open it, and listen. Yet Jae-won remained unaware of Yun-ho's intention. Returning home, she sat on the floor, dazed and lost. Yun-ho then resigned from his publishing job and informed his mother he would inherit her loan shark business, on the condition she cease harming Jinran, Jae-won, and their families. His sudden change failed to ease his naturally suspicious mother's unease. She ordered subordinates to monitor her son's every move, believing only his complete succession would spare Chairman's family. Nahi's scolding of Jinran offered her some solace, but facing her foster mother's incessant tears, she finally couldn't hold on to her stubbornness anymore. Only then did she realize who truly loved her. To help her pull herself together, Taeyong even sang a love song. Just then, Jae-won happened to see this scene. She cast aside all past resentment toward Jinran and joined in singing. Soon after, Jinran learned she had undergone a hysterectomy. She couldn't understand why misfortune always found her. Now that she had finally accepted her reality, she was left barren. Jinran remained unaware that this was all part of Yoon-soo's scheme. Her sister-in-law, visibly pregnant, came to visit Jinran. Seeing her swollen belly, Jinran couldn't help but feel envy. The thought that she could never be a mother in this lifetime pierced her heart with pain, yet she refused to give up so easily. She sought out the doctor, asking if there was any way to restore her body. After much hesitation, the doctor finally revealed the truth he had been hiding. He ended Jinran the hush money Yoon-soo had bribed him with, and told her she could conceive normally. It turned out the doctor had never aided Yoon-soo. Jinran was overjoyed to learn her body was still normal. She never imagined Yoon-soo would frame her like this. Furious, she disregarded her still recovering body and stumbled toward Yoon-soo's home. Her mother witnessed this scene and, worried for Jinran, hurried after her. Jinran stormed into Yoon-soo's house and demanded to know why she'd done this. Yoon-soo insisted this was the only way to ensure her son would marry Jinran. She promised to leave all her assets to Jinran and treat her well from now on. But Jinran no longer trusted Yoon-soo. Nahi overheard their conversation, her heart aching. She urged Jinran to return home with her. She vowed to sue Yoon-soo and make her pay for her crimes. Jinran asked her mother to leave first. She wanted to settle things once and for all. Yoon-soo brought Jinran to the room where she had been stabbed. Claiming Jinran was her savior, she promised Jinran would inherit her position once she recovered. But as Jinran listened to Yoon-soo's words, memories of the stabbing assault flooded back, overwhelming her. Terrifying emotions instantly overwhelmed her entire body. She collapsed unconscious on the spot. When Jinran regained consciousness, she found she hadn't left Yoon-soo's room. Unexpectedly, she overheard Yoon-soo's conversation with her subordinate. Learning that Yun-ho had stolen the publishing house contract from his mother's hands the previous night, Yoon-soo was furious. It turned out Yun-ho had only pretended to inherit his mother's position, but had actually intended to help Jae-won save the publishing house. Unwilling to be outmaneuvered by his son, Yoon-soo ordered his subordinates to retrieve the contract. Jinran immediately relayed this news to Yun-ho, advising him to prepare defenses. Ultimately, Yun-ho handed the contract to the chairman and proactively apologized on his mother's behalf. This deeply moved the chairman. Upon learning of her son's actions, Yoon-soo was furious. After receiving Yun-ho's thank you text, Jinran felt no lingering attachment. She moved out of the room that had never truly belonged to her. Jin-won finally discovered her brother's contract hidden within the record Yun-ho had given her. She realized Yun-ho had been silently protecting her all along. Jin-won could no longer bear the longing for Yun-ho. Unexpectedly, Yun-ho had no desire to reconcile with her. He refused to let Jin-won and Jin-ran suffer further because of him. Thus, he resolutely rejected Jin-won's plea to reunite. Since her recovery, Jin-ran's relationship with Jin-won had grown increasingly close. She wished for Jin-won's happiness with Yun-ho. Unable to contain herself, she inquired about the current state of Jin-won and Yun-ho's relationship. Though Yun-ho rejected her reconciliation plea, Jin-won vowed not to give up. She still hoped to use her sincerity to reform Yoon-soo. Jin-ran knew Yoon-soo's vicious nature and feared Jin-won might fall into a trap and get hurt. Yoon-soo would never allow Jin-won to use the contract to threaten her. Jin-won assured Jin-ran not to worry. She informs Jin-ran that she has already met with Yoon-soo and reached an agreement. It turns out Jin-won had previously gone to Yoon-soo's home for negotiations. She gave Mrs. Son to choices: either abandon her illicit business and enjoy a peaceful retirement, or face prosecution for her crimes at the police station. Though Yoon-soo was unwilling to give up so easily, but Jin-won held the original contract draft, which was sufficient evidence to convict her. After deliberation, Yoon-soo ultimately agreed to Jin-won's terms and abandoned her illicit business. Jin-won believed she had effortlessly saved Yoon-soo. Unaware this was merely Yoon-soo's ploy, she swiftly dispatched subordinates to seize the evidence Jin-won held that could incriminate her. Their conversation in the hospital room was overheard by Na-hee. She could not forgive Yoon-soo for ruining her two daughters' lives. Na-hee was determined to see Yoon-soo face legal consequences. She pleaded with Jin-ran to steal the contract from Jin-won and hand it over to her. She could not bear to watch Jin-won become Yoon-soo's daughter-in-law. Jin-ran deeply wished for Jin-won and Yun-ho to be together, but unless Yoon-soo faced punishment, no one could find peace. She too was torn. After recovering and leaving the hospital, Jin-ran chose to return to care for her adoptive mother. Everyone rejoiced at Jin-ran's return. Jin-ran and Jin-won lived together like sisters. The next day, she worried Yoon-soo would explode Jin-won. Jin-ran decided to follow her mother's advice and took the contract from Jin-won's hands. Just as Jin-won stepped outside, Yoon-soo's henchmen kidnapped her. They immediately took her to the mountains and threw her into a deep pit. They threatened her to hand over the contract. At that moment, Jin-ran felt a wave of panic and immediately called Jin-won. The henchman grabbed Jin-won's phone and threw it away. Unexpectedly, the call connected. Jin-won heard Jin-ran's anxious voice on the line. She immediately shouted for help. Realizing his cover was blown, the henchman frantically fled down the mount. He was promptly captured by Jin-ran and Yun-ho's subordinates, who had arrived on the scene. Ignoring the pain from her wounds, Jin-ran rushed anxiously to rescue Jin-won. Seeing Jin-won safe and sound in the pit, finally allowed Jin-ran to relax completely. Upon learning his mother had harmed Jin-won again, Yun-ho could no longer tolerate her actions. He deliberately lured his mother to the police station under the pretense of having captured the assailant who attacked Jin-ran. Without hesitation, he informed the police that his mother had come to turn herself in for Jin-won's kidnapping. He even brought in all of Yoon-soo's subordinates. Yoon-soo never imagined she would ultimately fall into her own son's trap. Yet, to everyone's surprise, Jin-won refused to acknowledge the kidnapping. She didn't want Yun-ho to suffer more pain because of his mother, nor did she give up on her determination to soften Yoon-soo's heart with sincerity. Yun-ho watched helplessly, unsure how to respond. Yoon-soo finally felt a flicker of remorse, but Na-hee refused to let her off so easily. Armed with the contract Jin-ran had given her, she insisted on pursuing legal action to punish Yoon-soo. Meanwhile, Jin-won still sought to soften Yoon-soo through love, but the furious Yoon-soo showed no appreciation. To drive Jin-won away, she summoned Jin-ran instead. Yoon-soo believed Jin-ran was her true daughter-in-law, yet Jin-ran, stripped of her former ambition, expressed gratitude to Yoon-soo for finally opening her eyes. Yet Yoon-soo dismissed Jin-ran's words as nonsense. She refused to acknowledge any wrongdoing in her actions. Even that night, Yoon-soo seethed with fury over the situation, but Jin-won, who never gave up, finally made Yoon-soo experience profound warmth. Jin-won held Yoon-soo tenderly as they fell asleep together. Surprisingly, Yoon-soo found herself savoring this warmth, but Na-hee wasn't about to let her off easily. She reported Yoon-soo for fraud and forgery of official documents. Faced with this predicament, Yoon-soo immediately bribed a prosecutor she knew to secure her release. Watching his mother's unrepentant actions, Yun-ho finally understood her weakness. The next day, Yoon-soo saw on the news that the place where she had hidden her assets had been burned down. Her fortune, worth billions, vanished overnight. In the end, all that awaited her was facing legal judgment. Time flew by, and a year passed. Jin-ran and Jin-won worked together to achieve remarkable success at the publishing house. Although chairman ultimately left the publishing house to Jin-won, Jin-ran didn't get angry like she used to. After all she'd endured, She finally grasped life's true meaning. Only through relentless self-improvement could one attain enviable happiness. After serving her year-long prison sentence, Yoon-soo was released. Jin-won remained steadfast in her original resolve, caring for Yoon-soo like a biological daughter. Finally, she earned Yoon-soo's recognition. At the wedding, Jin-won walked down the aisle with two fathers by her side. Yun-hoa and Jin-won lived happily together, amid everyone's blessings. Meanwhile, Jin-ran also found someone she loved. Tae-young eventually lost her sight completely. Though she could no longer see this beautiful world, she had her two daughters by her side. To film ends here. Interested friends, feel free to like and follow. See you next time.